Welcome to Narrative. My name is Veronica and today I want to talk to you about something that popped up on Threads for me, and that is the notion that there are no books for boys. What are you talking about? Of course there's books for boys. Most books throughout history has been by men, for men, about men. To this day, I have to go out of my way to find stories that are written by women. What are you talking about? This whole thing just reeks of laziness and a little bit of misogyny. That's all I'm saying. The most basic thing here is that even if we say that for the past 10 years, no books specifically written for boys have been published, okay? That leaves the past 400 years of books for you to choose from. Just because it hasn't been published recently doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Okay? There are so many great books out there that was published 100 years ago, or hell, Shakespeare's plays some 400 years ago. Maybe for boys that might be a little bit too extreme. I'll give you that. Maybe Shakespeare's not really for boys yet, but there are so many good books out there that was published pre 10 years ago that are specifically for boys. It's featuring boys, it's for boys, it's about boys doing cool stuff and all of that, those things. Pick them up. They still exist. What do you mean there are no books for boys? Just because it hasn't that fresh print smell, you know, doesn't mean that it doesn't work, doesn't have legitimacy, or isn't good. There are so many books for you to choose from. What are you talking about? I grew up on fantasy. I love fantasy. Fantasy is my main thing. And I still grew up reading stories about boys doing cool stuff, boys being heroes, boys being the all-powerful thing, and girls being the pretty princess that needs to be saved. Okay. And that was pretty much, they were the healer or the love interest. That was, or technically always both. You know, they were always like, oh my God, save me. You know, it's... I grew up on those stories, okay? I love fantasy still to this day, and I am so happy to get stories that features women and girls getting to do the cool stuff too, and being the hero, being the all-powerful and the magnificent and all of that stuff, and on occasion still saving that pretty princess, you know? I turned out fine, okay? If your boy has to read a book about a girl doing the same cool stuff, they will be fine. I promise you. Now, the notion that publishing isn't putting out books specifically targeted at boys might be true. At the same time, like we just talked about, pick up a book out of the millions of books that have been published that is specifically targeting boys. That is for them, about them. There are millions of those books. Pick one up. Girls weren't catered to in that way until fairly recently, and yet here we are consistently seeing that girls read more than boys. Why are we so inclined? Why are we so ready to expect girls to be able to relate to boys, but we don't expect the same back? We all know why that is. Boys aren't inherently misogynistic. They learn that from the people around them. They don't care if the book they want to read is featuring a girl or a boy. That is not what is keeping people from reading, specifically in this case, boys. It's not because they can't see themselves in fiction. As said, there's enough books out there that you wouldn't be able to consume them in a lifetime that are about boys and for boys. Just because the book space at large is catching up to that doesn't mean that it's forgetting boys. It's just so happened that it's no longer only catering to them. Boys aren't reading because they're not encouraged to do so. That's the bottom line of this. If your child does not want to read, does not like reading, it's not because of their gender. There's nothing hard-coded in the DNAs of boys that just goes like, books, no thanks. Reading, no thanks. It's good. Like, I'm here for the NFTs and the Bitcoins and the nonfiction. That's not hard-coded in anyone's DNA, okay? Just because they're a boy. They are not encouraged to read for enjoyment, to make this a good thing for them, and therefore they don't associate reading with something they want to do, that they like. This may be anecdotal, but the only people that I have ever come across that didn't like reading were people that didn't have parents that encouraged them to explore that, to pick up a book that they wanted to and then help them enjoy that. I am looking at fragile fathers who are refusing to let their son enjoy anything that is remotely considered girly. Because God forbid that your son learns that not everyone is like him and learns to have empathy and compassion for others. God forbid, right? Because it could be girly. There are books for boys. Always has. Any book is for boys. It just so happened that the books they may pick up doesn't only feature boy main characters. 20 years ago, there was barely any story that featured girls outside of romance and horse books. Yet girls were still expected to pick up Harry Potter and be able to relate to that main character. So your boy will be able to do that just fine. He's not taking damage just because he has to read about Katniss, all right? If you're fine with expecting girls to be able to relate to boy characters but not the other way around, well, you're really showing your true colors, aren't you? If a boy doesn't like a story or a character, that's fine. Don't force him to read that. There's no point to that. If a boy doesn't like a story or a character simply because it's about a girl, then you have a different problem. Have a conversation with that child about why that is. How did he get to that conclusion? Why is he having those feelings? And then you should have a very serious conversation with yourself about why you have created an environment that enables that. Now, with all of that said, I also came across a post, I cannot find my way back to it, but that essentially said that this originally came from a black author talking about how there wasn't any YA books being published that featured a black main character, black boy as a main character. And for me, that's a very fair conversation to have about representation and inclusion, because historically there still hasn't been any books at large that features specifically black boys as main characters in all its variations of being really cool and the hero and the all-powerful and the chosen one. That hasn't been part of history. So there aren't a lot of books for black boys to pick up to be able to experience that. I think this is a very classical internet thing, that we can't just have that very important and valid conversation about how there are a significant lack of black boys as main characters in this case, very specifically YA. No, we have to take that and just spin it into this stupid ass thing about there are no books for boys. Like, ugh, internet, you know? Characterizing this whole discussion as, you're not catering to me, therefore woe is me, is just stupid. It just tells me that you're not actually interested in having a good faith discussion. Because I do think that there is value and validity to the concept that, hey, we're not seeing as many YA books featuring boy main characters right now. And my child or sons that I am aware of, like nephews or, I don't know, students, whatever, are struggling because they want to read something new and fresh, but they're not, and they want to see themselves in that to a certain degree. having that conversation is really fair, but twisting it around and saying there are no books for boys, oh my god, the world is ending, is having a bad faith argument, in my opinion. And I'm not having that. We can have a grown-up discussion about needing representation of all kinds in book publishing, but don't pretend that specifically white boys haven't had millions of books and still have millions of books at their fingertips that they can choose from. Teach your sons to not be so self-centered that they cannot connect and relate to other people. It's not just going to be better for other people around them, that they're gonna treat them better because they have a fundamental understanding and compassion and empathy for them, but it's going to make life easier for your sons. Please don't set them up for failure in a world that wants to be better for all. And with all of that said, I think it's time to acknowledge for all of us that there is a space for everyone. Whether you are a white or black or Asian or a boy or a girl or non-binary or able-bodied or disabled, there is space for all of us. There's absolutely nothing wrong for a boy to want to read about boys doing cool shit. The problem lies in whether or not they reject the books featuring girls doing really cool shit too, simply because it's a girl. I'm gonna wrap it up here. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this type of content, make sure to hit subscribe. Otherwise, I hope that you have a great day, night, wherever you are in the time stream, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!